fallout over baseless claims of fraud in recent elections continues to preoccupy a segment of Arizona's Republican Party, including some elected officials and even some election administrators. How is all this impacting preparation for next year's election? For that, we ask Arizona Secretary of State Adrian, who joins us in studio. It's good to have you here.
Thanks for having me
back. Good to see you again. Yeah,
to see you too.
Let's talk about fraud. I mean, what's going on as far as administration right now? How are you handling things? Are you ready for next year?
Well, first and foremost, we have to understand that our elections are just around the corner. We are way less than, I think we're about 9 months from the presidential preference election in mid-March next year. That means 2024 is upon us. We've got to start working now to recruit the right folks, to train them well so that we can get them certified. And so right now we're negotiating a budget that is about $4.2 million plus $3 million of HAVA money that is already spent, needs to be appropriated by the legislature. Once we get that in hand, we'll be able to start helping the counties prep up and move things forward so we can have a successful election.
As far as the budget is concerned, your biggest needs, your biggest asks?
Well, our biggest needs are people. The Secretary of State's office and the Department of State have been underfunded, basically starved, for a long time, going back several secretaries. We've been working hard with folks in the governor's office and in both houses of the legislature to make sure to basically bring the office back to zero. We've got to have secured systems. We've got to have robust systems that actually do the jobs we want them to do. And we dodged the bullet in 2022 with some of the things that we're looking at now, especially the loss of experienced election officials across 10 of our 15 counties in Arizona.
I was going to say the loss of that kind of personnel. How much is election denialism and the vitriol involved impacting that personnel?
Well, look, last year the Brennan Center for Justice put out a report that talked about 1 in 6 election workers really being impacted by sort of the disinformation, a lot of the threats and things like that. It's down to 1 in 3 now. We've got a real problem nationally, and it's really hit close to home in Arizona. A lot of folks in election administration positions who've been there for a long time, they didn't buy in for this. They got into these jobs because they just wanted to serve the public. Now, we've got to talk about security. We've got to talk about dealing with these threats. We've got to talk about investigations in spaces where it never existed before. So the budget we're asking for speaks to better training. It speaks to better equipment. It speaks to all those things that we're hoping to be able to accomplish moving into the future.
Bigger issue, recruitment or retaining these officials?
They're both just the same, right? You've got to have that institutional knowledge from the folks that have been there for a while. They've seen it. They've done it. Those are the folks who are going to bring those new generations into that fold. Election administration is really complicated. I liken it to an iPhone. You can talk to someone across the world. It's really easy. But once you get into the chemistry and the physics and the engineering, it's complicated. So we've got to have career professionals who know what they're doing so that we can just go in, vote, and trust the folks that are doing it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of what the budgets, the things that you want as far as a budget increase, additional funds and such, were not included in the governor's idea for a budget. What's going on with that?
Well, you know, we've got priorities that are based on what the staff told us before the December 30th deadline we were given to turn it in. We utilized the staff that was in the Secretary's office in late December to make our recommendations. And, you know, folks are going to look at things in different ways. We are on the ground with the best elections administration team that the Secretary of State's office has ever seen. More years of experience on the ground in counties making these things happen. They know what the counties need. They know what that office needs. I trust their judgment, and that's the budget we put forward.
Indeed, but she's the former Secretary of State. She knows what that office is all about, too. Is there a disconnect going on here?
Well, you're going to have to ask the governor to describe her priorities. My priorities are based on data. They're based on the folks who actually do the job in that office, and they're based on the needs of all 15 counties are looking at and the stuff that they've got to have. For example, our voter registration system statewide supports directly and daily 13 of our counties. We've got to update and upgrade that system and the security that really locks down that system and get some techs in there to help move it forward day in and day out, because that's really the primary source of the basic piece of information for all of our systems. That's just one example, Ted. We need to fully fund these things at the state level and not just push the cost down to the counties.
And I mentioned you know, additional funds, and you mentioned security. You also want 24/7 security for yourself. Why?
Well, we wanted 24/7 security when we had a live threat. What we've actually asked for is an appropriation that will allow law enforcement to determine what security I need, my family needs, and other folks in the office need, and then they can deploy those security resources as necessary. We never asked for 24/7 all the time, but what we do want to do is make sure that we can get the job done. We can have continuity in government, and that we can stay safe. But we are also asking, working directly with TJ Shope, for example, he's got a bill to help secure addresses for election workers. And some of the other funding is going to secure our, security funding is going to help secure our folks at that front counter window that we want to open back up again, so people don't have to make an appointment ahead of time. They can just walk in and do their business.
So that's a $250,000 for office security, and you mentioned $500,000 for security for yourself. Is that part of that? The reports are that those are part of what you're looking for.
Right. The budget is available at azsos.gov/budget. Folks can look at the exact line items and what we're describing therein. Personnel security also does include security for myself and my family when necessary, as determined by law enforcement. We're not the ones that are going to make that call. But we also do want to make very, very clear, this isn't just personnel security. This is IT security for our information systems and that flow. We've got foreign actors and non-foreign actors who are attacking us every single day, and that's why we're working with the National Guard. We're working with the Arizona Counterterrorism Information Center. We're working with partners at the Department of Homeland Security already. We just need to make sure to shore this thing up before 2024 so we can have solid elections.
Indeed, those are the foreign actors, and obviously those kinds of threats are always there to a certain varying degrees. But again, the reports were that you did want 24/7, especially after a specific threat. Were those reports wrong? Because again, the governor's office said, no, I don't think so, because DPS doesn't think it's necessary. Again, it sounded like a bit of a disconnect there.
Well, the disconnect really is that I think there was some assumptions that folks said we wanted 24/7 all the time. That's not true. We just want the amount of security that is provided to the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House. It's an as-needed thing. Occasionally, they'll have somebody with them during public events, during times when they think there might be a threat. That's the only thing that we're asking for as well. At the moment in time when the live threat was determined by the county attorney's office, who works with the ACTIC, we were looking at that moment for 24/7, but that would not have lasted till beyond the actual threat.
Okay. Everything we've talked, just about everything we've talked about tonight has dealt with security in one way, shape, or form. And a lot of this, not all of it, but a lot of it is based on the vitriol, as I mentioned, of election denialism and the baseless claim that there was rigging, and also you were involved, everyone and their brother was involved in some way, shape, or form. Is that starting to die down?
Well, I hope so.
Well, but it's really what are you seeing out there?
Well, what I'm seeing is, people are, I think, generally speaking, coming around. I mean, look, the nonsense that was foisted onto the House of Representatives or that election committee resulted in the expulsion of a member of the House of Representatives. I think that speaks to the notion that folks are tired of the lies. They're tired of the conspiracy theory, and tired enough that they're willing to expel one of their own members. At least at the legislature, we're seeing some breakthrough of reason, some breakthrough in logic, and some breakthrough in the idea that there are facts out there in the world that can be verified. So hopefully we can have the grown-ups back in the room across the board, including out there in the world, so that we don't have to lose election officials in our smaller counties, where each person is so valuable to the operation of the elections for all the folks in those counties. That's really where we're focusing on, making sure that those folks have the resources that they need in our budget ask, which, by the way, folks should contact their legislature and the governor's office and let them know. The Secretary of State needs the resources that it has to have to run these competent elections. We've got a reasonable request that you can find at azsos.gov/budgets. They can go line by line, but we need help from the public convincing those folks at the state capitol that this is a priority for all Arizonans.
Arizona Secretary of State and acting governor, with the governor out of town, out of the country.
Well, just for a couple days.
Just for a couple. Okay, I can't ask you for any favors or anything like that.
Well, we may have a little fun proclamation coming in the next day or two.
I got you.
Stay tuned.
All right, Adrian Fontes, Arizona Secretary of State. Good to see you.